Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses. And like Senator Tillis and several of us apologize for coming in and out of the hearing while we cover other hearings, but grateful. So bear with me if you've answered this several times. Dr. Ghilarducci, I want to get it real basic with you if I can. In your testimony, you state the following, I'm going to quote or read your quote. "We need innovations in public policy to give more Americans access to what we know works, professionally managed retirement coverage that allows everyone to benefit from the stock markets the same way you and I do in TSP and a defined benefit plan, TIAA, and so on." So just so I'm really clear, do you believe that all Americans should be required to pay for investment advice?
Investment advice. I think all Americans should be in a retirement account. Oh, I see. And so if you're in a retirement
Should they
account,
have to pay for it?
you're paying for investment advice. You know what? Americans should have access to investment advice that's worth it. A lot of investment advice they get is from conflicted investors, and that's not good. But if we're going to hold our pension fund money in stocks, the advice about where to put it should be high value.
And high value being high price, I assume.
No,
So-
well, just that the cost, and the benefits from the cost, are outweigh it.
Sure. All right. In some sense, this whole hearing is obviously fundamentally about the level of access that retail investors should have to own shares of companies, right?
Yeah.
And some of you are positioning that the system's rigged. It's a casino. You heard all the terms. Investors should have to rely upon professional advice for a fee to have access. Let me ask you, Mr. Vollmer, Mr. Pilar, do you believe retail investors in the marketplace benefits from direct retail investor access to the market, and if so, why?
Shall I go first, Mike?
Go ahead.
I think that retail investors benefit hugely from direct access to direct ownership of the equities of operating companies, but they should do it with their eyes open, as Mike Pivovar said, and accept responsibility for the consequences. It's not a casino. The securities markets are not a casino. They have risk. There's significant risk to them, but as people have pointed out, stock markets in the medium and long term produce positive returns. Casinos, if you are in the medium or long term, you will lose money. So yes, they ought to have direct access, but they ought to be smart about it and recognize their limitations. And clearly, investing in mutual funds or index funds is by far the better approach for nearly all retail investors.
Including me, by the way. Mr. Pilar, would you have anything to add to that?
Sure, I agree with everything that Mr. Vollmer had talked about. What I would add to that is it's important for investors to have the choice to do both, right? They have access to indirect investments through low-cost, professionally managed funds, and then investors have the opportunity to invest some of their money on their own, do their own homework, do their own due diligence on the firms, and over time what that does is, whether it's through wins or losses in the stock market, they learn. It gets them more engaged in the stock market. As I mentioned, in business schools, we do, back when I was teaching, we even started doing some simulations in terms of paper money portfolios, and it's amazing how much students get involved in terms of the stock market and learning about companies when there's pretend money or real money on the line. So I think it really provides the opportunity for people to learn over time about the financial system.
I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you, really. Every time I participate in one of these, I keep thinking, speaking of schools, several of you are professors, or at least have been, or get to be on an adjunct basis every now and then. I just think every business school ought to take some Senate hearings like this and just play them for students, because I think there's a lot to be learned. So I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back the rest of my time.